Jake Paul improved. And as much as it hurts me to say, I think his chances against Nate Diaz are pretty good. The fight starts and Anderson is very inactive. He was kind of feeling the speed and timing out of Jake. He threw one punch and landed it the left hand. I'll get to that in a little bit. Just because of that southpaw versus orthodox matchup, you knew that the left hook was going to be something that the Paul team had been working on. So Paul kind of throws a jab, not meant to land at all, just kind of something, stepping into range. He waits for Silva's jab, which kind of grazes the side of his head, and he jumps in on the inside foot. Like, you can't see it because the body's cut off, but he jumps in with a huge left hook, and Anderson rolls narrowly out of the way. But Jake would look for this a lot, and look at the complete overextension in this punch. Jake was overextending a lot, and the Anderson of old, who was an absolute counter machine, was not showing himself. Jake Paul did a good job of working the body, and he eventually changed the body work into head attacks because of all the body work that he had been doing. That's a good shot to the body. And I've inserted a clip of Tony Ferguson, Nate Diaz here. And this clip isn't really similar because Jake's in orthodox and Tony's in southpaw, but it's the same right hand. And it's just to illustrate the openness of Nate Diaz's body and how he has a very long upper body frame, and he's not very defensively sound when it comes to body punches. Here he's looking to check hook, I think, but the punch kind of takes him off balance, and he sees that Tony's out of range. You see him like beginning to cock that back and like looking to land it, but he thinks better of it. I think that body punches will be a huge thing for Jake Paul when he fights Nate Diaz, and I think he'll have a similar strategy to this like he did against Anderson. You get them thinking down to the body, just like he did to Tyron Woodley in the second fight. You get him thinking low to the body, and that's when you come over, jab to the body, overhand up top. There's a ton of different setups there, but that's Jake's bread and butter setup, really. Go to the body and then go to the head, but just showing the openness of Nate Diaz's body. And it's really hard to hurt Nate Diaz in the head, so going to his body is a good shout. And here is that same left hook that he was looking for. He just darts in. There he lands it. He darts to the inside foot. Like southpaw orthodox, you know, conventional wisdom would be to get the outside foot and line up your backhand. But this is something that Ryan Garcia was doing in his fight against Luke Campbell, is taking the inside foot to line up his left hook. I had talked about that on the channel. I think it's one of my first videos. But he was taking the inside foot angle to land the left hook, and there he does land the left hook. Anderson covers up, but it peeks through the guard. And see this foot battle? This is the one punch that Anderson lands. So Jake is jabbing his way in. Anderson slips 2 jabs in a row, both to the inside, and Jake basically gifts him that inside foot step, or that outside foot step. So Anderson's left hand is lined up, and Jake is not in a good position to avoid the punch, so he gets tagged with it. That was the one punch that Anderson threw and the one punch that Anderson landed. I was like, okay, Anderson's kind of figuring out the timing. Now he's going to start pouring it on, and Jake immediately does that. It's like, bro, step outside the outside foot. It's always a thing in southpaw orthodox. But he's winding up these big telegraph left hands and falling. He's overextending massively here into orthodox, but it kind of works for him because he's falling into the clinch where he was doing a lot of good work. He was doing good work in close inside fighting, using the tie plum, throwing uppercuts, just throwing like combos. And the ref, good on the ref over here for letting them work in the clinch, because a lot of refs in boxing are like really like break it up like immediately as soon as they get to this. Like he'd be running over there. But he did a good job of letting Anderson work in the clinch, and Anderson was doing good work in there, and we'll see that in a bit. But Jake clinches up. Jake's looking for that same thing again. They were definitely drilling this exact thing as Anderson is sometimes prone to leaving that left hand down. So they were definitely trading this setup. Jake almost gets countered big by Anderson for it. There's a little bit of the counter prowess for Anderson. Guard up and then throw back, but Jake was just out of the range. But Anderson was throwing with some bad intentions in this fight. And sometimes that was allowing Jake to get out of the way because he was telegraphing some of his shots big. He was throwing that left hand and switching into orthodox. There is a really nice uppercut because Jake loves to duck when he feels a punch is coming, but he ducked right into that uppercut. Here Anderson, like, it's kind of cut quick, but he taps his foot. Like, you can see his foot up off the ground. In another angle, you can see him tapping it with his glove, and then he steps in, outside foot, kind of like steps on the foot of Jake. Left hand straight. Jake does a L step to cut the angle, but gets hit with a left hook on the way out. And this is kind of Hagler-esque from Anderson, throwing a left hand out of southpaw. Jake changes the angle. That just puts Anderson into an orthodox stance, and he can switch and is comfortable out of both. But here he's in orthodox, and whenever Anderson was in orthodox, this overhand right was kind of scaring me, because watch how Anderson jabs, his hand comes down and Jake goes over the top and it just misses. And that overhand right is Jake's best punch, and that just missed, and he threw everything into that overhand right. Oof. That was giving me some minor heart attacks when he would throw that. But here he would also throw the overhand right in southpaw when Anderson was in southpaw. So Anderson's here, he steps in, cracked him with a right hand. And here I'm going to show a clip of Nate Diaz again. Nate Diaz out of southpaw stands pretty tall. Anderson also standing tall, and he just kind of tries to shell up with that. But watch Diaz. He has been hit by this exact punch many a times. Jorge Masvidal being the most prime example. I don't know what I think he's parrying like a straight punch here maybe, but it was not a straight punch, and that is a clean right hand from Jorge Masvidal. And I think Diaz will obviously be able to take shots from Jake, and that's why the body work will be something that Jake has to focus on. And I think early predictions is Jake by decision, which pains me to say, but that overhand right is just a money shot against Nate and for Jake. And here we go back to the body, and in the first round you could see he was going to the body with the right hand and just sticking it like that. But now he's combining it, right hand to the body, left hook up top, and that clubs Anderson. Again, huge outside foot step. I'll circle it every time. Tries to line up that left hand, but is just out of range. And again, it's very, very telegraphed from Anderson when he does it, and he's overextending, falling into the orthodox stance, but it looks like he's kind of doing that on purpose, because then he leads with a jab and fights out orthodox for a second. This was a really close short right hand. Anderson tries to take the outside foot step, and he gets it, but Jake just blasts the right hand down the middle. It looks like it grazes, but it doesn't land clean. But that was a terrifically timed shot from Jake in terms of place, like when to throw it, because that was perfect if that would have landed clean. Here's another right hand from Jake. He throws the right hand in different ways. He can throw it straight like I just showed you. He can throw it kind of over the top overhand, and here he throws like a very long hook as Anderson is getting out, and he changes it to that, and this tags Anderson right at the end of the punch, and he eats it. Good on Anderson. Anderson has always had a good chin, but he showed it there. He slips inside, does Jake, outside of the jab, I apologize, body rip, and then to the head, left hook that clubs, and he throws it again. Here's that overhand right, and this is a punch that scares me for Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz likes to probe in with the jab, and if Jake sits down on one of these, oof, I know he's not even looking at the target. His eyes are like His eye line ends up over here. But he is throwing that thing hard, and if that thing lands, Anderson narrowly avoids that. That is all of Jake Paul's power going into that. And he recovers decently, actually, because he threw that so hard. Very overextended. Here, left hand, if Anderson's in position to do it. But he's kind of just not even thinking about that. But Jake recovers back, goes body, left hook. And yeah, he starts to add on punches to the body. Like before, just one punch to the body. Then he went one punch and then upstairs. And now he's going two and then upstairs. And here, another overhand right. And this lands very flush on Anderson. Anderson showed a terrific chin. Double jabbing his way in. Right hand. Left to the body. And Jake does a decent job here of taking the outside foot and blasting that right hand. And then when he throws the left, it kind of shifts his body to this angle. Then he goes right to the body, left to the body. And that's decent work there from Jake. And that's really nice as well. This is something that can work for Nate as well, is this pressure getting Jake against the ropes. But I think what Nate is a little bit better at is not crowding himself too much. And I think Nate could stay at the end of his punches and unload combinations a little better than Anderson can. Anderson throws a big bomb. Nice uppercut. His uppercuts in close were very, very nice. Here we see Jake going back to the body, jumping in with the jab. He takes the outside foot. Jab, 1, 2, and then back to the head. And that was very nice by Jake. To the body, to the body, to the head. Like that is good work by Jake Paul. And he just kept setting that up, and that is eventually what gets him the knockdown. He's taking that angle. He's going jab to the head, body, jab back to the head, and then right hand just clips Anderson on the end of his cheek and drops him. Yeah, Jake wins the decision. I just think this Nate Diaz Jake Paul fight is probably gonna happen next, unless something on Nate's end doesn't go right, like he doesn't want to take the fight. But if he does, then that's probably what's going to happen next. And I could see some issues that he runs into. I think Nate is getting older. He didn't look great in his last fight. He looked a little bit slower than he usually does, a little bit more out of shape. And that was at 170. Jake fought Anderson at 185. So if they fight at 185, Nate's going to look a little bit bigger. He's going to have to put on muscle, but I don't even think he's going to do it. He's just going to look softer at 85, and Jake's going to go to the body and line up that right hand that he goes on everyone. And against the southpaw, like Anderson Silva, who is more defensively responsible than Nate Diaz, I think that right hand is going to cause problems for Nate Diaz. As much as it's hurting me to say this right now, my early predictions would be Jake Paul beats Nate Diaz by decision, which just makes no sense in my head, but he looked much better, did Jake, in this fight. So you got to give him credit for that. I know people love to hate him, but got to give him credit where it's due. So congratulations to Jake. Congratulations to Anderson for a great fight at 47. That's really impressive. But yeah, thank you for watching, and peace.